It's Thursday night here in the garage, and we've got a lot more stuff that arrived this week to put on the Ducati ST4 build. Welcome to Hacker Week. As mentioned, lots of things arrived here this week that we're going to be putting on the bike. One of those is the new mudguard I got for the rear with no hole in it that the other one had. The other one, as you may recall, had a hole in here and had a box for the battery, and I didn't really like the way it hung down, and I knew I could work out something a little different and also maybe lose some weight on the battery. So I ordered up an EarthX Lipo battery. We're going to talk about Lipo batteries in this episode and why I picked EarthX. This thing has 420 pulse cranking amps, and I think it was rated at 370 cold cranking amps, and it only weighs 2.5 pounds. Really neat, but it's pretty cool because it has its own built-in microprocessor battery management system. We're going to talk about that and how important that is on a Lipo battery, because without it you can do a lot of damage to them if you're not careful. So we're going to have to do a little modification to the mud guard here. All I've got to do is cut out some of this little reinforcement stuff here, not a hole or anything, and this will drop right in there and the seat will go on and it will fit. And that is a cool thing. And we'll get it mounted on the bike. We'll get the back part that has the license plate holder mounted to it. And I'm going to take apart the old mount that was on the ST4 for the gauges, and I'm going to keep these little rubber mounts. We're going to fabricate up a new mount that's going to go on there. Still a little undecided about the fairing issue. I may just stick with this Ducati monster fairing that I've got for now. Maybe later go to something different. But I don't think I'm going to go back to the ST4 full fairing setup and all that. I'm not going to put the mounts for the saddlebags on. I'm going to leave those aside. The touring I'm going to do on this bike, where I'll need saddlebags, will be a few trips here and there. So when I want to do that, I'll just bolt these on and then I can put the saddlebags on. But I pulled the signal lights off from these so that I can mount them to this, and then I'll have the rear signal lights taken care of. The front ones are another story. I've got to figure out where I'm going to mount those up. But we'll just keep all this stuff aside, and when I need it, I'll bolt it on and use it. Also picked up on eBay for about 140 bucks this. It's a modified seat that's been cut down and lowered a little bit. The seller said he took it to a professional upholsterer. I believe that. It's nicely done. It's all stapled up underneath. It's got a foam strip around it, and it's got a cowl on the back that will come off. So if I want to have a second rider on this seat, I can pull the cowl off and I can have that. Or I can go back to the nice comfy original seat that I got with the bike. So where do we start? First, I think we will start with this mudguard and modifying it for the battery. So we're going to put this EarthX Lipo battery in here under the seat. It's going to lay in there like that, but it needs to drop down a little to the point where it is flush with this piece of plastic right here. I've got to take the some of these reinforcement ribs out and drop it down about 15 or 17 millimeters, I think is what it's sitting above that. I like using the metric system. It's just so much better at base 10. Anyway, so what I've got to do is take out some of these reinforcement strips right here, these little ribs. It's not really going to affect the integrity of the mudguard. And I got a couple of choices with how to do that. One of them would be like a power sawzall, or I could just go old school and use a keyhole saw. I've got a couple of them here. This one's got a much coarser blade on it. So I think I'll probably start with that, because all I've got to do is slice like this and like this, like that, and take that rib out. And sometimes hand tools get the job done a little bit better than the power tools. So let's get at it and see what we can do here. It's slicing through there quite nicely. So I've made my slice down that way and this way, right to here. And I have found with plastic, if you score it with a razor knife first, I'm going to do that on both sides here. And then take some pliers, get right down next to where you want to break it away, and give it a little wiggle. This comes from early years of hacking up plastics when I was a kid. Learned a few tricks about plastic. Look at that, nice and clean. Let's do the other side. There we go. Now the battery sits all the way down there flush like that. And by the time it goes in, the frame rails are right here. Holds it in place just fine. I may pad it up a little bit. Actually, the Earthex kit comes with a bunch of sticky back foam pads for various fitments in different bikes or other applications. So I may use some of this stuff to keep it in place a little better. The rear fender's mounted back up, relays in place. There's the place where the battery's going to live, and there it is. It drops in there just like that. Let's put the seat on and check the clearance. So the battery's right there. That little yellow label is the battery. And you can see it just clears the seat. The seat's sitting down on its little mounts here on the frame. And that's perfect. Nice snug fit. Well, that takes care of battery location. All I need to do is reroute some heavy-duty wires back to that from the area up front where the battery was mounted. Just getting the rear section together here, the license plate holder portion of the fender. I've got some lights to mount on here. These came off from the saddlebag frames. They were mounted on there. I took them off. And now we're putting them back here where they originally were. Now we can get this mounted onto the tail section. And there we go. The ass end of the bike is together. I think I've got to replace a couple bulbs in these. I noticed one's missing on that. I'm going to check all the bulbs before we finish up. I added a little bit of that padding that came with the battery. A piece right there and a piece there and a piece there. I had to cut it in half by its thickness. So that's in there really nice and solid now. I like. The shop thermometer says it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 Celsius, but man, it feels colder than that in here this morning. I'm guessing it's more like 42 or 45 degrees. I got the old propane heater going. That helps out a bit. So back in here on a Saturday morning, first thing I'm going to do is get the cables run for the battery. I've got to run them from here up to the ground on the engine, which is back in there somewhere, and then figure out where to reroute some of the wiring that runs to the battery now in this portion of the loom. And that all leads to the rectifier. Got to find a home for the rectifier as well, somewhere where it can stay cool. So it'll kind of be like a thing where we do all that stuff at once. And I can get this gone. I also need to run a wire to the starter solenoid. So anyway, let's get started on that. Let's see, all of this stuff. This is the 40 amp fuse for the whole charging system here in the rectifier and whatnot. I think I'm going to move this and the starter solenoid all towards the back under the seat. There's room under the seat. So I've got to get at this stuff right in here. Let's see. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some of this open to gain a little access. I think I need to slice this one off. Then I can take this and run it to my coil, which is going to be in the head. I'm using a monster coil. If you modify that plug a bit, it'll go into a monster coil. And this goes to the front brake light. So that's got to go up that away toward the front of the bike. Let's see what else. That's the rectifier plug. That's going to go wherever the rectifier goes. Probably somewhere here toward the front of the bike where it gets plenty of air. So let's see. Just going to cut into this sheath carefully. Make sure I don't cut into any wires. If I just stay nice and light with it, should be okay. And just peel this back. There we go. I've got a little bit of tape to unwrap here. Get that off. A little more. Put on by somebody in Bologna, Italy. Mamma mia, that's a nice tape job. Okay. Alright, that is going to go that away to the front brake. Nope, to the coil, sorry. This goes to the front brake. Since I want to peel that away, I probably need to take this other piece of sheathing off. Alright, now that can go there. And now this business can route towards the back. Okay, everything that was on that side has been pulled through and stripped back. I did this so that I could separate what's going to stay up front and go over on that side from everything that I want to take to the rear. So now if I go through this and just sort it all out, just basically separate these wires in such a way that they run nicely through everything. We'll run it all to the back. Get the rectifier mounted up, I think, right here. I'm going to put it up underneath here somewhere. Should be okay there. Safe from wheel travel. I'm going to have to double check that, just how far all this goes, but I'm thinking I'm probably going to mount it up under the back. And it'll stay cool there, and all these wires will run right back to it, and it's near the battery, which is good. Slowly but surely we're getting there. So I got it separated, peeled it all back, taped this back up. Now all of this stuff runs toward the back, and it's going to connect to the starter solenoid and the battery and the rectifier. So I've got to tape all that up. I need to pull it out a little so I can get at it. So I've got to pull the ECU, pull the plug, and then I can finish taping this. Then I'll go back and rewrap this whole loom that all runs that away to the other side, and then we'll worry about where all that mess goes. Now I've got to tape up this portion of the harness. This is how I tape up harnesses. Just wad everything together and then just keep wrapping at a slight angle. There we go. That's all taped back up. This is all redone. That's the coil wire. That goes to the key switch. That's for the front brake light. And then these three go on the other side to various sensors. So I just need to route those back across and connect them back up. Done on this side. Everything is all routed and cleaned up nice. There's the harness that I redid coming into this side with it going to, let's see, that's the oil pressure switch, the neutral switch, and what's the other one? One more, the brake light switch, rear brake switch. So those are taken care of, and the one that goes to the key switch is wire tied to the frame right there. Now we can move on to the starter solenoid. I'm going to mount this thing up back here. Where is that pesky little bugger? It is right here. We're going to mount that right there, and I've got a spot marked for it. I just need to drill a hole so I can put a 6mm bolt in it. So let's see. Let's hold the camera with one hand and drill with the other.
Got a little spacer there to take up this little bit of ribbing that is on that plastic bit. Okay, let's tighten this thing up. There we go, a little spacer in there to take care of the dimensions of those ribs that are on there. Then we can just put the relays back in place. There we go. Relocated. Seamus is huddled up by the heater.
Well, here's the aftermath of about 6 hours of work. This is what the bench looks like after you do a bunch of electrical stuff all day long. Whew. And there we go, the fruits of my labor. Batteries in place, all the leads are moved back here. Used to be up here in this area. Everything's been moved back. The harness got split up and the starter solenoid is right there. The 40 amp fuse lives right there. This is the ground wire that runs up to the engine. And from the starter solenoid, there's a red wire that runs up to the starter. All of that is routed right along here, along the frame rail. Goes up here, drops down here, and then right down in there is where the ground is for the whole bike on the engine. And then this runs down here to the starter right there. And the rectifier now lives right there. Mounted it on a piece of aluminum with a couple of clamps, and the wire for that comes back up here, runs along here, and then connects in. And let's see, over on this side, the wires run down along the frame rail here, and then they just follow the rest of the harness down to here. And the one for the rectifier comes off the alternator right about there, runs up here, goes like this, and then runs down in there to the rectifier. And that is hard soldered, no connectors, which is good. You want to have as good of a connection from the alternator to the rectifier as you can get, and then you'll end up with a really good charging system. Now right now I've got the plug wires disconnected because I'm going to redo the coils with some monster coils, but when I turn things on, everything still works. And all the instruments are happening. They're just kind of dangling down there. That's for another video. Thought I might get to that, but this wiring took quite a bit of time. Okay, let's talk a bit about Lipo batteries. So, Lipo batteries, or lithium polymer ion, they use a polymer electrolyte instead of a liquid electrolyte. And they are made up of cells, just like a lead acid battery is. And those cells, when they get charged, need to stay balanced. If one of them gets a little out of whack from the other, that's not good. And good chargers do have balancers, the ones for Lipo batteries. Like your laptop battery has its own built-in charger that will individually balance the cells. So why a Lipo battery? Well, that battery I just put in only weighs 2.5 pounds. The one it replaces, this thing, I don't know, this has got to be like 8 pounds, easy, 8 or 9. So if you're putting the battery up under the seat, you know, up higher, and you're saving that weight, that makes a little bit of a difference. So Lipo batteries, in that sense, are an advantage. And the other thing with them is you don't have to maintain them. This one is pretty unique in that it will cut itself off from the entire circuitry if it drops below a certain voltage, so it won't pull itself all the way down. So anyway, here's the deal with Lipo batteries. There's quite a few brands out there, like maybe 7 or 8 really, you know, marketable brands that are known. This one is EarthX. There's a couple other ones that I was looking at. Ballistic was one. I forget the names of the other one, but I spent a good 2 hours the other day on the computer doing lots of reading about them, lots of research, and got quite an education, so I thought I would pass it all on. So here's the deal. There's a YouTube video where a guy's got a brand called Ballistic battery, and he's pulled it out of his motorcycle, and it's, you know, smoking. The video shows like smoked battery pulled out of a bike. And so he fires up his Yamaha and he says, you know, just got the Yamaha out for the first time and had to jump start it. The battery was dead, and we're ready to go for a ride. Oh, whoa, what's that? And there's smoke coming out from underneath the fairing, you know, and for some reason he thinks it'd be a good idea to rev that sucker to about $5,000 a few times, which I just don't understand what that's about. Maybe he thought it was coming from the engine, whatever, but it's a funny thing people do, like, you know, like revving the piss out of an engine is going to solve everything. Anyway, then it cuts to the scene where he's pulled the battery out and it's sitting in his driveway and it's melted and it's smoking. And so he's like, wow, you know, these ballistic batteries really suck. And a commenter goes, I know what you did. You jump started your battery and it was dead, and it's a Lipo battery. Lipo batteries do not like to be jump started. So that's rule one. Don't ever jump start one for more than like maybe 5 seconds and then get that battery off. If you have to do it that way, then, you know, quick, get the cables off as soon as you fire it up. Because here's what happens. You short out a cell. Now you've shorted one cell. The other cells are maybe trying to make some voltage, but maybe you shorted all the cells, but your alternator is pumping voltage into there, and they're dead. So it's like a dead short. So it's just like what's happening inside that battery is it's dead shorted, and your alternator is putting out voltage trying to charge it, and it's just cooking the battery because it dead shorted when you tried to jump it. So that's rule one, don't do that. The other one is don't let them die all the way down. They, you know, all motorcycles sit in the wintertime, whatever, you store them for a while. There's parasitic draw from the clock and some other things. In fact, some Harleys have major amounts of parasitic draw when it's just sitting there parked. And then what happens is the battery goes all the way down, you try to jump it, and then you put a charger on it and you ruin your battery, unless you have a Lipo battery charger. And the way that works is that it starts out really low, works its way up very carefully, starts at lower voltage and then comes up to voltage and continues to charge the thing. Now this is one I bought, it's the Optimate, I think it's the, what is this, the 471 model, something like that. It's on here someplace. Anyway, this is the inexpensive one, but it does a good job. So when your battery's all the way dead, this will tell you what to do. You hook it up, and it's a smart charger. It'll initially put a tiny amount of voltage into it, and then slowly bring it up. Another trick you can do with a trickle charger on a Lipo battery is connect it up, and then when you've got the charger on, temporarily connect another 12-volt battery to it just for a few seconds. That gets the charger going. Some smart chargers won't charge if it sees 0 volts on a Lipo. And so you put a little bit on there and it comes back up, and then you can continue to charge it. Now, the deal with EarthX batteries, the reason I bought one, is that they have a built-in microprocessor battery management system. Now what that does is it's its own little charge controller in there. It won't let it charge too much. If it goes over, it's rated, this one's rated at 40 amps. If it charges over 40 amps, it'll cut out. It'll just stop the charge, so it'll save the battery. If it goes below a certain voltage, it'll turn off itself from the system to, again, save the battery from going all the way down. And it's also got a built-in balancer for the cells. So when you connect up a good Lipo battery charger to it, it takes care of itself, and the lifetime of these is going to be a whole bunch more than any other battery on the market. Believe me, I've done my research. This one is the one to get. What did I spend on it? About 270 bucks. I think it's the most I've ever spent for a battery in my life, and then this was another 50. Altogether from Amazon, these two items were about 330 bucks, I think. And didn't even hesitate to buy it after I found out what this is all about. So in my opinion, that's the one to get. Some people may have had a different experience with them than I have had. I mean, I'm still gotta, you know, drive the bike around and see how I like it. But I think I'm gonna have good results with this battery. So there you go. There's a quickie on Lipo batteries, maybe not so quickie, but don't ever jump start one when it's dead. You'll kill it. So how about a parting shot with that new seat? It looks pretty sweet. I like that. And of course those side pods are going to go back on too to hide the wiring and stuff. So there you go. We're moving along pretty good. What's in store for next week? Well, let's see. The instruments, for one, that's going to be something that I've got to fabricate up a plate for. And I have one here. I've got a big chunk of aluminum, and I'll be making a mount for that instrument cluster and getting that on there. And this whole front wire harness mess, that's the next one. That's going to be, I think, the same kind of thing where I'm going to be cutting some of the wires and resoldering, rerouting, doing some things to clean it all up and somehow hide it all somewhere in here. Not really sure where. It's going to be quite a challenge, but it's okay. I love a good challenge. So that's what we'll be doing next time. And I thank you for watching this episode. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to donate, there's a link in the video description. And I guess that's it for this week. So, ciao, and until next time. We're going to put stuff on the bike today and stuff. Yeah. What?